Let me again welcome you to the IR-4 workshop. We appreciate you taking time out of your schedule to join us in our attempt to normalize things in this crazy year. We were scheduled to be at a hotel in Minneapolis this week, going through the extensive list of potential projects to establish IR-4's 2021 research plan. We hope that someday we'll be able to return to the classic face-to-face workshop format, but in the foreseeable future, we all will need to work together in this new normal and to make the best out of a challenging situation. Before we get into the subject matter of this update, I want to share with you the companies who continue to support the IR-4 project and this workshop. They are paying the bills to keep the registration cost free. You will see this slide over and over again over the next several days. If your company's logo is not on this slide, there is still plenty of time to commit to sponsorship and get recognized for your contributions. I intend to touch a little bit on the following topics during this presentation. Let me take a minute for you to review these topics. If you have any questions on these or anything else, please reach out to me and I'll attempt to provide you with the requested information as quickly as possible. You can email your questions to jjbaron@ncsu.edu. There's no denying that the global pandemic with the COVID-19 virus has impacted everything for everyone in one form or another. IR-4 is no exception. In the overall scheme of things, IR-4 continues to do its job to get crop protection tools into the hands of the specialty crop growers. Has it been more challenging? You betcha it has. Just to summarize the impact, there have been members of the IR-4 family that have contracted the virus. To the best of my knowledge, all have fully recovered and are now back at work. As far as our field research program goes, almost all of the field trials went out without a hitch. We have had some challenges due to environmental conditions, but we did not run into a situation where people were not allowed to go into the field and do their jobs. The statement is not true for IR-4's Canadian partners, who are still operating under significant restrictions at some of their field sites. I do have to admit there were a couple of studies where the cooperating company did not get the test substance to the IR-4 field site on time, and these trials will need to be repeated, but that was the exception and not the rule. In the IR-4 laboratories, on the state side, most have returned to full operations utilizing proper social distance and protective equipment. It's not, unfortunately, the same situation for the ARS labs, or the Agriculture Research Labs, where the scientists have had some limitations on the amount of work they can do in the lab. IR-4's quality assurance inspection efforts in the southern region, in the western region, and the northeast region, and they're all operating at almost full capacity, with the exception of travel to trips in Hawaii and Puerto Rico. The North Central region has not been as fortunate. Some target inspections had to be switched elsewhere or deferred. The North Central region has started to perform some of their laboratory inspections via virtual means. The office work in the regional sites as well as headquarters is being completed. There's been some efficiencies lost, but for the most part, the most important activities are being completed. IR-4's partners in EPA and the companies are utilizing alternative work sites for the most part. All of our spring and summer meetings have occurred over Zoom. As we go through the workshop this week, please think of ways we can further adopt to make this new normal more efficient and effective. If you got thoughts, I'd like you to share with me after the workshop. Switching gears, I am proud to share that the IR-4 team's submissions led to record-breaking successes in 2019. EPA's minor use team was able to assess our submissions, which have led to 208 new tolerances that covered 1,545 new registrations. The previous high number of new uses was 1,150, so we blew away the previous record. Kudos to Nancy Fitz and her team and all the work they've done to make this happen. What makes it more impressive for the minor use team at EPA is, if you recall, EPA was shut down the first 6 weeks of 2019. Looking into 2020, IR-4 submissions to the Environmental Protection Agency continue to yield new registrations. As of July, data from previous years were submitted to EPA have yielded 671 new uses. Since then, there have been other actions with more registrations. While it's doubtful that we will break the 2019 single year record, we are on track to be over 1,000 new uses. Other matrices for 2020 include 65 new residue studies consisting of 448 field trials. IR-4 also conducted 100 product performance field trials. The mid-year number of IR-4 submissions to EPA was 12. This was down a little bit from previous years. We are now entering our third year in IR-4's new research area, Integrated Solutions. For those of you who are not familiar with this area, IR-4 has integrated our biopesticide research program with some research with conventional ag products to manage some of the more difficult to control pest and more difficult pest management solutions. For example, Integrated Solutions will provide resistance management tools as well as provide residue management strategies. IR-4 is still reserving some resources for product development in organic agriculture. This and the next slide are some of the projects we have established over the last couple years in the Integrated Solutions program. These are not the easy ones. For example, bacteria diseases on onions is a very difficult pest management problem. Downy mildew on organic basil, another tough one. Please note the state of California has helped support some of IR-4's efforts in the Integrated Solutions area. In addition to that, they've also supported some of the IR-4 research work in the conventional food program by funding some residue field trials. More on this later. IR-4 continues to be fully engaged in international harmonization of pesticide registrations. Our underlying motive is to eliminate barriers of exports of domestically produced produce. Equally important, harmonization often leads to much greater efficiencies. Working with global partners, we can significantly reduce the cost of data development. Just a couple updates from our international partners. Starting in Canada, Shirley Archambault has retired from her position with Canadian Pest Management Center. Shirley has been involved in joint projects with IR-4 for nearly 20 years, first with the Canadian Horticulture Council and more recently with the PMC. Shirley will be missed. Shirley has been replaced by Christine Gagnon. Christine is a quick learner and the joint program has not missed a beat. As mentioned previously, Canada has not been as fortunate as IR-4 in their 2020 research program. Due to the COVID-19 virus, activities at several of their field research sites have been limited or suspended. Their new priorities for 2021 is significantly reduced to allow them to catch up on their 2020 commitments. The new priorities really will be focusing on joint projects with IR-4. While we have not conducted any joint projects with the European Union Minor Use Coordinating Facility, we continue to maintain close contact with this group. Unfortunately, they have run into a funding issue. Some of their member states have not provided previously committed funding. The coordinator and other members of the staff have been separated from the coordination facility for other reasons. These are significant setbacks. At the same time, the European authorities are aggressively removing pesticides from the European Union market. And in some cases, they're revoking MRLs, which significantly impact U.S. growers. IR-4 remains very engaged in the global work. As part of our master plan with USDA, we have helped establish a minor use foundation. This not-for-profit foundation is being led by Dirk Drost, a familiar face in the IR-4 world. Dirk has taken on the leadership role in ensuring that capacity building, joint projects with developing and developed countries, as well as financial donations are fully implemented. You can see on this slide some of their actions. The Minor Use Foundation is also managing the Global Minor Use Workshop. This workshop is scheduled for next week. There are 2 sessions to accommodate different time zones of the world. They will be identical. This is an example of one of the morning session on September 21. Just a few words about the Environmental Horticulture Program. We established priorities for this part of the IR-4 research last year, so there's limited discussion of pest management priorities in ornamental crops this week at this workshop. For those of you who do not know, the Environmental Horticulture Program performs about 675 crop safety and efficacy field trials annually. The results of these projects are consolidated into summary reports and submitted to the crop protection industry to support registrations, or in some cases, prohibition of some registrations. Also under this program is a USDA-funded activities that involve the study of the impact of insecticides used in ornamental production on pollinators. Just because a flower is big and showy doesn't necessarily mean that any pesticide used on this crop is going to end up in exposing the pollinators. This data has been used by EPA to assist in their assessment of the neonicotinoids. Switching gears again, one of the big issues IR-4 is facing is the relocation of our national headquarters office from its host home at Rutgers University in New Jersey to North Carolina State University. While Rutgers remains supportive of IR-4, the School of Environmental and Biological Sciences was concerned that they would be forced to subsidize IR-4 under a new fiscal management model that Rutgers University was implementing. Under this new model, IR-4 was being asked to pay $1.4 million a year of assessments. IR-4 could not legally pay this fee. Unfortunately, or fortunately I should say, North Carolina State University is in a much different situation and was able and willing to establish a long-term agreement with IR-4 to serve as our host institution for the next 10 years. Obviously, there are some real challenges with the move. The move is disruptive on many, many levels. IR-4 is committed to remain fully operational during the 2-year relocation period. While all IR-4 employees in New Jersey were offered jobs at NC State, many cannot or will not accept the offer. To minimize the disruptions, we are establishing a shadow organization. This means we are hiring new employees at NC State while the team at Rutgers continues to function. IR-4 has hired approximately 1/3 of the new staff at NC State. These new team members are working closely with many of their peers at Rutgers. To give you an example on how this works, over the next several days, the majority of the discussions at the workshop will be led by either Van Starner or Venkat Pedabota. Van is retiring at the end of the year from Rutgers, while Venkat joined the NC State team back in May. Venkat will be Van's replacement. While there are many challenges with the move, there's also sizable benefits. IR-4 has strong institutional support from NC State administration. IR-4 is part of the College of Agriculture and Life Sciences long-term vision. We have already established alliances with the departments and centers, including the Center for Regulatory Excellence. North Carolina has a huge specialty crop production industry, and many of the crop protection companies are a short distance away from IR-4's new offices. I previously alluded to some of the human resource changes within IR-4. In 2020, IR-4 headquarters will have or has had 4 retirements. Retirements include Tammy Barklow as QA manager earlier this month, Dan Kunkel as senior associate director on November 1. Also, Van Starner and Cheryl Ferrazzoli will be retiring before the end of the calendar year. Collectively, these stars have been with IR-4 over 100 years. They will be missed as co-workers, and more importantly, they will be missed as friends. As one door closes, another door opens. As mentioned before, IR-4 has aggressively pursued some new hires for the North Carolina State Office. Roger Batts and Christina Marconi have moved into new positions within the IR-4 family. Roger has moved into the lead biologist and weed scientist, and Christina is joining IR-4 headquarters as study director. Philip Moore has also joined the team as a study director. I previously mentioned Venkat Perabota in his role as assistant director of product performance and research planning. Our most recent hire is Johanna Maslow, who's IR-4 new quality assurance unit manager. Finally, a special shout out to Crystal Honatsky, who's IR-4's chief of staff. Crystal has been very much involved in the back office activities associated with this workshop. Overall, I am very pleased with the new talent and look forward to working with them to keep the IR-4 machine running. Money is always an issue for IR-4. We have now reached the so-called milestone of a decade of flat funding at $12 million annually from the USDA National Institute of Food and Agriculture. Other sources of funding also remain flat. This, combined with additional expenses and heavy pressure from our host institutions to have IR-4 contribute more to university service fees, has led to a reduction in IR-4's ability to fund research. We are now talking about 40 new studies for 2021. Not long ago, the new studies taken on in a given year was almost double of that number. This lack of new funding does not mean that no one is trying. The Commodity Liaison Committee, under the leadership of Dr. Mike Bledsoe, has been very active in communicating the needs for additional funding for IR-4 to USDA and Congress. We are finally seeing some optimism with the potential for new funds. This past February, the proposed USDA budget included an increase of $5 million for IR-4. The House of Representatives, in working on the 2021 Agriculture Appropriations Bill, proposed an increase of $3 million. While it's highly likely we will have a continuing resolution for the end of this calendar year, the plain bottom line fact is we are starting to gain some support within the government for new funds. I don't want to steal the thunder away from others, but I do want to highlight some of the changes we're making this year. First, we've decoupled the new technology session from the traditional workshop. This was held virtually in early August. Feedback from this session was very positive. We were very fortunate that several of the companies had the announcement of new technologies during this new technology session. This led to a surge of new requests submitted for IR-4's assistance. In this priority setting sessions over the next several days, it's our goal to duplicate the in-person experience as best as possible. We have spent a lot of time internally with a planning committee and a consulting group called Fountainworks. We are pleased to say attendance is way up. We expect to be over 300 people before the final numbers are counted. This is almost a doubling of the in-person attendance. We will ask you to participate in establishing the 48 priorities in residue studies, 8 H+ projects in product performance, and 8 integrated solution projects. This will be challenging at times, but I feel confident this group is up to the challenge. Here are some processes and rules. While it's easily for you to review this easily in the slide, I think it's important to go over some of these things. Please turn your camera off. We're asking you to do this to conserve bandwidth. If you want to speak, type Q in the chat box. You will be recognized by the Fountainworks team that you've indicated you want to speak. Everyone will have an opportunity to speak. Be mindful when you talk of the time you're given the floor. We ask you to be concise and clear. We also ask you to be respectful of others' opinions. Listen openly, listen to what they have to say, and understand that their views may be different than yours. And finally, I ask you to limit your questions and your comments only to relevant materials. Genuine questions and comments only. As we wrap things up, I want to give a big thanks to our friends at Fountainworks, Warren, Maddie, and others, IR-4's partners at EPA, including Nancy Fitz and her team, the crop protection companies, the members of the Commodity Liaison Committee, and others in the Specialty Crop Minor Use Committee. I also want to give a big shout out to the 4 regional IR-4 field coordinators, Mira Lee, Janine, Tony, Michael, and their teams. The teams at IR-4 headquarters at Rutgers in New Jersey and at NC State in North Carolina. The workshop sponsors, the planning committee who spent a lot of time and effort to make this workshop the best it can be, and finally, of course, to you. Again, thank you to our sponsors for the financial support. Before I entertain questions, I want to give Michael Horak an opportunity to make an announcement of some additional contributions from the state of California for IR-4's 2021 research. Michael?